Super Plus.
Greetings and welcome to the Hills of Steel 1 Tank Breakdown. I'm your host Andrew, and in this series I'm going to be taking you through each of the individual tanks of the game to show you how they work and how they play. First up, in the series we're going to be taking a look at a brand new tank. Say hello to Siege. This new tank comes with a really interesting new gameplay mechanic, which we'll check out later. It also comes with two available skins, Terminal and Invader, as well as the standard green. So let's spice it up a little bit for its first run out. Let's go with Invader, I think. So as you can see, it has a low armor, but great gun and great engine. But also because of its style, its stability is really strong. Naturally, it comes with most of the standard boosters, so Repair Kit, Circular Saw, Shockwave, as well as many others. You'll be able to choose what fits your playstyle. However, since it is a new tank, we're not going to add any boosters to it. We also haven't leveled it up, like you would with the other tanks. We're going to leave it at level 1 so you can see what it's like straight out the gate. So, let's actually take a look at Siege in action in some of the maps, so you can see what he looks like. Let's start things off with the standard Summer map. So as you can see in the tank, it has two sets of wheels, one in the front and one in the back. Unlike some of the other vehicles that have this, its stability is a lot stronger. Unlike the Tesla and some others, it also has a weapon on the front, as opposed to being on the back of the vehicle. This means that it makes it very stable going across the terrain. You'll also notice that the weapon itself is actually different this time. Instead of having a single fire button, it actually acts as a double press. Siege uses a cluster type weapon, which means that when you fire off the shot, it sends off the first shot, but if you press it again, it will break the main missile into smaller little cluster bombs, falling down upon your enemy. So, you can determine when you want to trigger that as you send it flying forward to best take out your opponents. The advantage of that means that you can battle enemies both close and far away, as you can let your projectile travel further before detonating it. With direct hits, or when it hits the ground, only half the clusters will spawn, so make sure to use it at the right time. It also makes it very strong when taking down multiple enemies at once. If you time it rightly, the little cluster bombs can fall, hitting multiple at the same time. It also happens to be very strong against bosses. As you can see, we're about to face Thunderclap. Firing off the missile, with a single cluster round, it takes off more than 75% of his health. Another advantage that Siege has is that because of its stability, the way that it's designed, and how the barrel of the weapon is angled, you can actually battle both uphill and downhill without having too much problem. So as you can see, if we position ourselves facing downward, the barrel still fires forward enough that you can challenge enemies close by. And of course, if you angle on a hill upwards, it just means that your projectile will go higher, but when detonated at the right time, will still rain havoc down upon your opponents. Let's now jump into another map to see some of the advantages of Siege. One of the things to take note when playing Siege is that when you fire off your missile, when you actually trigger it to detonate into the cluster bombs, will determine how much of a spread it has. So the longer you wait and the higher you fire, the more likely it is to spread across a bigger region. Whereas if you trigger it earlier, it'll fall into a smaller, narrower field. So make sure to use this to your advantage when you're fighting against your enemies. Let's now take a moment to see some of those things in action as Siege makes his way through the desert. Hills are not a problem, multiple enemies are not a problem, and also distance between the enemies are not a problem. When utilizing the cluster bomb just right, we're able to take on anything that the map actually has to throw at us. However, we haven't seen just everything yet. What about enemies that are in the sky? Moving forward, we're going to be attacked by a helicopter. A lot of tanks tend to struggle with this. However, the Siege is able to take it down quite easily. So it makes it perfect for both sky and ground combat. Let's take a look at another boss fight as we take on Armadillo. With the terrain and distance, we're able to fire off a single shot and do a lot of damage to Armadillo. He doesn't even get close. At this point you're probably wondering, but Andrew, Siege looks so overpowered. Surely there must be something wrong with him. Well, it turns out there is. One thing. And you need to be very careful of it. Although you can do a lot of damage to the enemies, when firing off your missile, the cluster bombs can also do damage to yourself. So, if you fire off the missile and the cluster bombs drop, you're going to die. So you need to be careful of that. So, overall, when playing Siege, there's a number of things you can take into consideration, and a number of things that you can ignore that you would have to with normal tanks. Positioning is not really key, because you're able to fire up over hills and trigger the detonation when you want. Both air and land units are easily dealt with. The vehicle overall is quite stable, so you can move as fast as you want across the terrain without worrying about flipping or getting yourself caught into a bad position. The speed is relatively good as well, so you can go forward and backward with ease. Putting all these things to good use will see you being able to make great progress with Siege. It is not only good as a beginner tank, but also will be able to push the limits for those of you that want to go far. We are super excited for all of you to get your hands on the tank, and you can do so right now. It's available in game. This concludes our first video in the Hills of Steel 1 tank breakdown series, and our first look at the brand new tank Siege. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to keep up to date with all the new content coming across this, as well as to follow our social medias. All the links are below. Also, don't forget to leave us a comment. Let us know if you've been playing Siege and how you've been playing it. We'll now leave you with some action of Siege. And until the next time, have fun, and we will see you on the hills.